also to present the work that we've been doing over the past years on NAD and how to translate findings from preclinical models to the human situation, which is, I will present quite a bit of unpublished data, but of course linking it to how the field has been developing over the past 10, 15 years. And it will come to no surprise to many of you that NAD has taken a central role in many of the hallmarks of aging displayed on this quite complex and detailed graph. But what you'll appreciate is that in each of these hallmarks, NAD is taking some role, at least, targeting either cellular senescence, mitochondrial dysfunction, telomere attrition, and all the other hallmarks as well, of course. And it doesn't come as a surprise if you think of the role of NAD in cellular biology, cellular biochemistry. You've all learned during bachelor's or even before that NAD plus and NADH are an essential redox couple that controls many of the reactions going on in glycolysis, TCA cycle, and other pathways. But in addition to that, there's various families of NAD-dependent enzymes, such as the poly-ADP ribose polymerases, the sirtuins, the C-ADP ribose synthetases, and each of these families of enzymes, they use NAD as an essential substrate, and by using NAD as a substrate, they control many different reactions. And as such, NAD participates in more than 500 enzymatic reactions and somehow controls virtually all major metabolic processes in the cell. And with that, again, it's no surprise that NAD touches these various pathways of aging, and that maintaining NAD homeostasis is a critical step, an essential step for proper cellular function. But most of this evidence is coming from preclinical models. Over the past 10, 15 years, a lot of evidence has emerged from studies in mice, in C. elegans, in fruit flies, but real, detailed research on the role of NAD in aging in humans is very scarce. And so this raised the question for us, is NAD metabolism somehow compromised in human aging? And can we use whatever strategy to restore NAD homeostasis to the benefit and to treat age-related disease? And so the first thing we wanted to do is to look at an accessible matrix, an accessible tissue, which is the blood. And the idea was that if we can take a drop of blood, for instance from a finger prick or something else, we can query the status of NAD biology in this drop of blood. We can use this, monitor NAD levels, and use this to inform clinicians to treat or not treat certain conditions, disease conditions, by either doing a therapeutic intervention with a drug or with a supplement, or by lifestyle interventions, and then monitor again if the NAD levels are rescued. And the way we do that is using this mass spec platform. So we have this metabolomics equipment in our institute that we use routinely to measure NAD, as well as 130-something other metabolites that we get as a bonus. And the work on this NAD drop of blood metabolomics, and especially the work on NAD, is the work of Marija Trautović, who's also here in the audience, and she will present later on poster 5 today. So if you want to know more detail about the methodology, how she developed it, and how she's using it, please visit her poster. It's really close to the entrance of the building. And so the first steps that she took, we're a clinical chemistry lab, so the first thing she does is to rigorously validate the method, as we do always for any of the methods that we develop. So this is some of the validation data. On the left, you see the intra-assay of the methods showing that there is good reproducibility in the measurements. We also do inter-assay. We have in the middle, we see if we spike a certain blood volume with a little bit of NAD, do we recover it? And indeed, we get a almost 100% recovery of the NAD that we spike in these blood samples. And finally, we tested stability of NAD if we go through repeated freeze thaw cycles. Because if you want to collect NAD in a clinical trial or in a clinical setting, ideally you would want to freeze it and later on do the measurement rather than doing it immediately. And you can appreciate from the graph on the right that every freeze thaw cycle we lose signal of NAD, suggesting that it's not super stable. And the stability or lack of stability is actually not super reproducible, so we induce some form of variation in the measurement if we go through freeze-thaw cycles. So we try to avoid that as much as possible. The reality of it is, of course, that we need to accept the kind of variation, analytical variation that we are facing with either the inter-assay, intra-assay, but also the temperature, the stability in freeze-thaw cycles. And so we decided to model this and to estimate how many individuals would we need to see an effect of NAD with age. And so that's what you see here. And if you follow the various curves, and especially if you follow the blue line, which is including the analytical variability that I showed, as well as the freeze thawing effect, you can appreciate that with a group size of 20, we will be able to measure an effect of NAD, a difference of NAD of about 7 micromolar, which is not an unrealistic thing to expect based on the preclinical evidence that we have. And so we looked for cohorts where we could get whole blood. It's important to realize that we cannot do this in plasma because NAD is not in plasma. Well, if it is, then it's only trace amounts that are, in my opinion, likely artifacts. So we need whole blood. And we had these cohorts. Cohort number 1, which contained younger individuals, typically of the age below 30, slightly older individuals over the age of 60. We had a second cohort where there's an age distribution from 28 to 73. And we had a third cohort where younger individuals were defined as lower than 40, and older individuals were allocated in the group over 40. And finally, in this group, what makes it extra interesting, I think, is that we had Olympic level athletes, blood samples from Olympic athletes as well. So we could compare if this Olympic athletic ability would somehow influence NAD levels as well. And for instance, if you assume that NAD would go down with age, would it be rescued in the athletes? That was the idea that we pursued. And so first I want to show you the main cohort that we looked at, which is aging cohort 1 from our own institute, where we looked again at the people from age lower than 30 and people age higher than 60. And essentially we see no difference whatsoever in whole blood from these individuals. And when we took that to our other cohorts, also we see that in the second cohort, second aging cohort, where we see this regression, that there is actually no correlation between age and NAD concentration in whole blood. And also in our athletic cohorts, our aging cohort with the athletes, we see first on the left column that NAD is not changed in older individuals compared to younger individuals, and also in athletes versus younger, there's basically no change. So it seems that under the various conditions that we tested, NAD is not changed in blood from older people compared to younger people. And this data is also supported very nicely in a recent bioRxiv publication from the NADMAT company, who's also represented here at the conference, where they also see no change with age in blood NAD. So this raises the question, if blood NAD is not changed with age, and we cannot use that as a biomarker to measure aging and to see if interventions are working, how about tissues? Can we maybe use tissues, although it's more invasive? And for that, we turned to a cohort that we obtained the samples several years ago. This is people who are either young, typically students, 20 to 30 years old, and the older group was between 65 and 80 years old. This is, by the way, cohorts that have been collected by the group in Maastricht University. And within the group of older individuals, the older adults, it is subsetted by level of training. So what we called at the time normal older adults, whatever normal means, these are people that have an activity level of 10,000 steps a day, which is quite high. The reason why we call it normal is because it's matched with the younger group. Then we have trained older adults who take about 14,000 steps a day, and we have people who actually have compromised muscle function and also take less steps a day, and which we called impaired older adults. We took muscle biopsies from each of these. The impaired older adults, of course, is a little bit more difficult because they have compromised muscle function, so it's not ideal to convince them to take muscle biopsies, but fortunately we had 6 samples as well. We could do our metabolomics, our targeted metabolomics approach, and we identify the metabolites that are changed with age. And one of the top metabolites is the third row that you see here is NAD, where NAD levels are relatively high in younger individuals and decreased in older individuals. And I told you we have these different healthy states. So people who are trained, people who have impaired health. And so we decided to subset, again, the NAD levels to the various activity levels. And if you do that, you see that in all the aging groups, there seems to be a decline in NAD, but it follows a health trend. So the people with impaired muscle function, they have the lowest level of NAD compared to controls, young controls. Normal, they also have a decreased level of NAD, but people who are athletic and take 14,000 steps a day, at least in our cohort, they seem to have a maintained high level of NAD comparable to younger individuals. So this leads us to the question, I mean, if we see these changes in NAD in the muscle, what are the drivers of this NAD homeostasis in the muscle? Again, we decided to use the same cohort and do a more extensive molecular and biochemical phenotyping. First of all, we performed a metabolite analysis. This is the data that I showed you, published already a couple of years ago. We decided to look at the lipids in very much detail, also published data. I will not go into that today. But again, also we decided to go for transcriptomics, so RNA sequencing on the same muscle biopsies. And we correlated the expression of the various transcripts from our RNA sequencing to the abundance of NAD in these muscle biopsies. And first, I show you here the positive correlations, so genes that correlate positively to the level of NAD, and the pathways that are involved in this process, highlighting markedly mitochondrial processes at the top. And also, if you go down the list, these are almost exclusively mitochondrial processes that are linked to the abundance of NAD in human muscle. And you also see it in the network analysis that NAD very closely clusters to the various genes involved in mitochondrial function, which is, in a certain way, very much expected and also validating the approach. What was unexpected is the negative correlations. So in negative correlations, genes that are going down with higher NAD levels, we do see a number of pathways, including ubiquitin-related pathways, popping up in negative association pathways. And also, if you look at the network, these are ubiquitin-related genes that are very closely connected in a negative fashion to the abundance of NAD. So this raised the question, can we somehow influence NAD levels through interference of this ubiquitin pathway? And we did that by treating cells, C2-C12 cells, as a first step, proof of concept, C2-C12 cells, muscle cells, and AML12 liver cells, and we treated them with either nicotinamide mononucleotide as a bona fide accepted NAD precursor, and we treated also these cells with MG132, which is a proteasome inhibitor. And under both conditions, with NMN as well as with MG132, we see an increase in NAD both in the muscle cells and in liver cells, suggesting that this ubiquitin proteasome system is indeed linked functionally to the NAD pathway. So to conclude this part, we see that NAD is decreased in muscle from older adults and follows this health trend. So the more you are trained throughout life, the higher you can maintain your NAD levels, or at least in the association studies that we did. We see that a loss of respiration is a age-related mRNA change in human muscle. I didn't show you all the data, but we found that in the transcriptome. And actually this loss of respiration that happens is absent in trained older adults. So trained older adults maintain their mitochondrial function very well. But what is interesting, and to me at least was the most novel part, is that the proteasome is tightly linked to NAD biology. In addition to that, we identified several additional networks that may limit NAD abundance with aging. And those are the pathways that I didn't yet show you, but that we also identified. And again, this raises the question how we should see NAD biology and NAD treatment towards the future. So this is an overview that two of our talented PhD students recently made, Casper Winten and Mario Trautovic. The paper will be hopefully online soon. They looked into the evidence in human clinical trials for changes in NAD with age and changes in NAD upon treatment with precursors or NAD boosters or supplements. And so what is intriguing is that in blood, we don't seem to see a change in NAD with age. The minus here in the middle, there's no change in blood with age. But in supplementation studies, you clearly see an increase in NAD. If you treat people with NR or NMN, you clearly see the change in NAD. While in the muscle, we seem to see a decrease in NAD with age. But in most of the supplementation studies, if not all the supplementation studies, you don't see any change in NAD itself after supplementation. You see markers of NAD metabolism change, but not NAD itself. And so this begs the question, what is going on in these various tissues? We need more sophisticated measurements, I think, either in blood, in tissues, also imaging kind of modalities to see how NAD changes with age and how NAD changes with supplementation studies to better understand really the biology and the homeostasis of NAD under these various conditions. And so what we're really looking for is cohorts of, especially human studies, under very well-controlled situations where we can test this hypothesis of NAD change with age, and as well the change of NAD and metabolic health parameters after supplementation.